Okay, hello Euruko. So welcome to the history of a Rails monolith. Let me introduce ourselves. He's Anatoly. My name is Cristian. And we both work at Zendesk. We've been here for quite a long time. And yes, everybody's asking me the same. Is Zendesk using Rails? Yes. The main product of Zendesk has been using Rails since the beginning. It's actually a Rails monolith. So yeah, we use Ruby and Rails very heavily in our structure. Shit. Doesn't work like this. So this is a presentation about the history, not only about this monolith, but about the whole history of Ruby on Rails, at least for the last 17 years. But most importantly, I want you to understand that how special we are as a community. You know, like we are different from all other programming communities in the world, I would say. And let me give you an example. I would say that our history is amazing. And I will give you a bit of a crazy example. You know this movie, Gladiator 2? I am incredibly excited about it. It's going to be in a few months released. I mean, I'm looking forward for it. Said this, everybody's saying the same. It looks good, the trailer is fine, but you know, they had to make up stuff. Somehow, looks like the Roman Empire didn't have enough drama to make a movie about it. But this is actually something that happens very often. Like in this other movie, Napoleon, they also had to make stuff. Apparently, you know, like the Napoleonic Wars were not exciting enough. Do you know which movie didn't need to make up anything to have drama, conflict, all kinds of crazy stuff? I mean, you know this. If you've been for a while in this community, you know that. Like, we are the community of drama. There's so much. Like, this is just something I took in 5 minutes, just remembering stuff that happened for us. And don't get me wrong, I absolutely love the drama. It's hugely entertaining. It's not only have a job. It's like I have a job in the middle of a soap opera. It's fantastic. For a while, actually, I tried to become a Scala developer, and that was very long, 3 months. But I went to a conference, actually. No, I think it was Scale by the Bay. And I was a bit shocked because everybody was dressing like this. As you see, speakers in Ruby conference don't dress like this. And they were, you know, talking very corporate-y about very corporate stuff. A few months after, I went to RubyConf. And this is who gave the keynote. So yeah, we're different, and different in this case makes us better, I would say. I would like to finish this part with commenting about something that Joseph Alim commented the other day, which incredibly inspired me. Is this like being passionate about technology is something I learned from the Ruby community. Actually, I also learned it from the Ruby community. So, thank you. Okay, but let's get into the topic. We're going to talk about the history of a Rails monolith. And why I feel like talking about this now? Well, I recently moved back to my hometown, Barcelona. I lived abroad for quite a lot of years. And at the same time, I made my 10th anniversary working at Zendesk, which is quite a lot of time. And finally, I don't know if anybody here knows about this TV show, but have you heard about this TV show called Frieren? Everyone knows. Okay. So, Frieren is a show that follows a certain tradition, no? Yeah. So follows a certain tradition of fantasy. Fantasy, it can be understood to talk also about technology. You know, it's like the link in between science fiction and fantasy. One of my favorite examples is A Wizard Over Sea by Ursula Le Guin. And in A Wizard Over Sea, magic works in a very specific way. You can control something if you know its true name. Honestly, for me, it always felt like this is about abstractions. You build the right abstraction about on a system, you get power over it. But again, I didn't create this link in between technology and magic. This is something that has happened always. So, what does Frieren say about magic / technology? Well, the plot is like that. You have this elf who is kind of immortal, and you see her through multiple centuries. So, well, you see her like having friends die because most of the people are humans in this world. But you also see how magic evolves. For example, a spell that is something incredibly innovative in the first part, let's say, becomes the cornerstone of all magic in the future. I think a little bit that technology works in the same way. Moreover, I kind of started to identify a bit like Frieren, with Frieren. I mean, she's an elf that has lived over 1,000 years. And that makes her the possessor of forgotten, forbidden, magical knowledge. Okay, what about us? I would say that Anatoly here and me, we are equally mythical. We are engineers that have been over 10 years in a big tech company doing Rails. This makes us the possessor of forgotten, forbidden, magical Rails knowledge. And we would like to share it with you. Okay, let's start on the topic itself. I want to talk a bit about the history of the concept of monolith and how it evolved in the last 17 years. I started my career in late 2000s. Those were the good times. But then started the 2010s. No, and the 2010s all of us did all kind of weird stuff. And this may or may not include microservices. No, I am again something I'm going to repeat a lot of times is that I'm not against the idea of microservices per se. I am just against the idea of using microservices everywhere, all the time, without any reasoning. The good news for me, in my opinion, is that monoliths are back. I think in the last few years, since the 2010s, I would say, this idea came back and became more popular. Honestly, if you've been a while in the industry, you realize that a lot of these debates are pendular. Opinions move back and forth, sometimes without a very clear reason beyond the idea that the grass is always greener on the other side. A lot of these debates are about trade-offs, and suddenly it's very easy to forget about the bad part of the trade-off that you just did. But then this leaves us with a question. Why the microservice boom? Why were they so popular in the 2010s? Well, this idea that has been repeated a bit in the last talks, but I think that the zero interest rate may be a part of it. There was so many money in the market that a lot of the bad parts of microservices, like the added complexity to maintain them, became more acceptable. But again, I am not the only person that said this at this conference. I was very happy when I saw this slide the other day. But again, microservices what happened with microservices during the last decade was absolutely crazy. I remember I went to visit a friend in Montreal. He was working for a startup, and he told me the story. He started to describe me the architecture of his company, and it was this kind of incredibly complex stuff. Like they had hundreds of microservices. And I was like, man, I really don't understand this design, but congrats, sounds like the company is doing well to maintain all this. He told me, no, Cristian, we only have 10 customers. And this we all know that happened. Say this, I am not totally against the concept of microservice. I wouldn't dream to write that it's bloatware, as Elon did here. My opinion is more similar to Jason Warner's, the CTO of GitHub, that this is like a spectrum. And a lot of times when you start a company, startup, you want to start with something that you're able to iterate very fast. And in my opinion, monoliths are great for this. When you're searching market fit, then it's great. And then slowly you can break this monolith and make services if you want. This is kind of the path that Zendesk has been following in the last 17 years, even if I don't think there was, out of times, a very clear direction that that's what we want to do, but that's what we end up doing. Said this, there was multiple phases in the 17 years. The original vision was to have a set of Rails apps that they will share a significant amount of logic. So yes, we will grow, we'll have different applications doing different things, but they would share code, they would share libraries where most of the code would be there. This vision lasted for quite a long, but we are not following it anymore. But said this, you can still see a lot, like the remains on the gem file. All these Zendesk underscore gems are stuff that live in our monolith, and they are shared by very, very few applications. But they are there. Then later we move to what I call the service era, and In our case, I don't think it was so much because we wanted to follow, change our architecture, but it was more because we both companies, we made acquisitions. And it made sense naturally to build services to share information in between two different applications. If you have application A and application B, it doesn't make sense that all the information for accounts live in A. It's kind of arbitrary. Finally, we moved that what we're doing more and more is event-driven architecture. So using Kafka, for example, we generate events, and those events are consumed by your applications that at the same time do certain action, generate other events, and it's like a pinball game in the end. Next, Anatoly will talk about how the database evolved.
Hi everybody, my name is Anatoly. I work at Zendesk 9.5 years, I think, 9 years. So we went through a journey from small startup to large enterprise organization. And I see some friend in auditorium, his name is Cristian. He was part of Zendesk, fantastic engineer. Say hi to him. Did I make it right? Anyway. I didn't start as Ruby engineer. I started as sysadmin, and I see another friend in the room, Ivan Nemychenko. Is he here? He's probably. Oh, I see he's fantastic. Okay, I made all my homework right. Okay, I started as a sysadmin, and I was not interested in development up until 2007. So, and all my experience at Zendesk gravitated towards operational reliability work. This is how I end up in where I am. And I talked 2 months ago. I talked to my friend about Ruby performance and reliability and why people think that Ruby is slow. I think you know my friend. Does anybody know my friend? Somebody of you know my friend. So we talk about performance of the systems and particularly large system performance. And you ask me, Anatoly, what much has to do with the databases? Quite a lot. Let me explain. Zendesk is large organization, a very large organization. And large organizations have large data set. And I can tell that database is the biggest bottleneck. Ruby has never been bottleneck. What happened is a database at Zendesk is not a single server, of course. Database at Zendesk is a shared, it's a sharded database infrastructure with many more servers than you can fit in your head. With the same schema and the sharding key is a count ID. We have a bunch of customers in one shard, another bunch of customers elsewhere, etc. That tells you one thing, that we don't keep all data in one place. We keep it in multiple places. Was it enough? No, it wasn't. What happened is we found out that we have a clear distinction between active data and non-active data. You can say cold and hot storage, active, passive, whatever you call it, but my microphone died. Test, can you hear me? I have a backup. Backup microphone is amazing. So we have a clear distinction between active data set and non-active data set. Was it enough? No, it wasn't. The picture you see on the screen is very important to understand where we are and why Ruby is not slow, why something else is. So we have our data archived to go to DynamoDB and elsewhere. And the message I want to share with you is, Lev Tolstoy from a book called Anna Karenina said, all happy families are alike. Each unhappy family is unhappy in some way. And I can say that all happy systems are alike. Each unhappy system is unhappy in its own way. What makes your system happy? What makes your system unhappy? And you can guess that I talk about database all the time, so it will be about database. 3 properties about good database. You expect database to be performant and fast. You expect database to handle any query active record can throw at it. And you expect database can have any data you want. Well, a lot of physics tells that memory is limited. You can't fit everything in memory. Even if you can only choose 2 out of 3. You cannot have 3 together. And this is the story of Zendesk, how we went through transition and fixed many problems. You can have 2 out of 3. Which 2? Past of Zendesk, small data set. Data set was relatively small to where we are today. Query runtime was consistent, and we can do anything. You can run any query with active record. You will notice a difference. Next slide, I call crisis. Crisis and data set became too large. Even if you archive, even if you share database, it doesn't matter if you hit certain size of the organization and an amount of customers and users. What has to take a backseat? Well, query runtime took a backseat. Complex queries dominated, and the data set expanded so much so quick. It followed exponential growth curve. Well, this is the present. Present is large data set is still large data set. It hasn't gone anywhere. But the query runtime improved. And you can guess that the message I come back again and again that the performance system, large system equals large data set. That means that the data set has to be manageable for the queries you ask it to do. And if you know about AMDA law, you know that if you have no data, if you have basically a stateless system, you can scale as much as you want. You have you throw more hardware, you have expected consistency in runtime. Small data set follows a slightly worse suboptimal curve, but large data set hits certain point. I can't have mouse pointer, but when we hit a certain point of the degradation, nothing will help. Only thing you have to do is to go back and use the data set to be on this curve. And I have something to ask you. I'll tell that Ruby is not slow. What is slow? And you tell me database. Ready? Ruby is not slow. What is slow? Okay, that's it. Okay. Your database will become bottleneck long before the Ruby will. And that's what the message I want you to leave with. Back to Cristian.
Yeah. Thank you, Anatoly. And next, I would like to discuss a bit about something that is super important to keep a healthy business. You need to test stuff. Please don't do something like this. You know about what I'm talking about, no? Like a few months ago, apparently someone decided to deploy a change on an antivirus that was modifying Windows kernel without testing anything. So he broke basically all the Windows machines in the world. Thanks God I don't use Windows. But still, I don't use Windows, but I still miss my flight to Singapore thanks to this. So thank you. So don't be like this. But going to a bit deeper into this, I would like to comment on a conflict that there is in software engineering, particularly in dynamic languages, I would say, is test versus types. The original value proposal in Rails is that, in Ruby, is that you don't really need types because you need tests. And if you have enough tests, then you don't need types. Of course, there is a lot of debate about that. A lot of people are using sorbet, things like sorbet. But at Zendesk, we are very extremely in the left side of this debate. We have experimented with a lot of stuff, not really with typing. Still, we need to have a lot of tests because we do have a lot of code, like over 1.6 million lines of code, in the monolith and all the gems that we are including that is part of libraries like private to Zendesk. And how many tests we have to test all these things? So I counted a few months ago, and this is the number, 55,786 tests. Actually, we do have way more because this, again, does not include the unit tests that belong to these private gems. So you will be thinking, okay, Cristian, how do you manage all this madness? Because there is a lot of tests that all this is being run every time that someone does push. So how you manage this? Well, we have a secret weapon, a strong guardian that checks the value of our code and checks that everything makes sense and is correctly tested. His name, some of you may know him. He's called Ryan Davis. Ryan Davis is actually the creator and maintainer of Minitest. And this avatar is his real avatar in Slack, the Zendesk Slack. Let me merge or I will cry. Sometimes I like to help juniors, and sometimes they come to me and say, "Hey, Christian, remember that PR? I wanted to merge it, but I was not able. There is this guy that is telling me to add more tests." It's like, oh, you met Ryan. That's great. So again, at Zendesk, we have the creator of Minitests, and we use Minitests very heavily. And at this point, you will be making the same question that a lot of people that join Zendesk does. Why Minitest? And by that, they mean, why not the other testing library that is very popular in the Ruby world? Well, we do have a reason, I would say. Again, the context here is that we do have a lot of tests, and we run them a lot. Actually, it's not like we run the whole test suite for each push. We run it twice. There is a reason for this. I will explain later. That means that we're running 111,572 tests. So why is Minitest better in this situation? I asked Ryan, and he said, Minitest is fast, small, and less magic than the alternatives. In fact, when we try to modify a little bit Minitest for our own purposes, what we do is reduce features and have less magic. We want more performance. Okay. The twin sister of testing is reliability. Obviously, this is very important. We have customers, and that's from where we make the living. Let's be honest. We all mess up from time to time. We all end up in stupid situations. That's normal. But still, we need to be very careful. Software has a real impact on the lives of people. Like for example, the other day I was talking with some engineers I met, like from a company called Nipro. And they actually doing software for dialysis patients. That's something that you cannot mess up here. Still, for most of us, the reliability-wise, the moment of truth is the deploy. You can have a super broken branch in your site, nobody cares. The moment that it touches a customer system, then is when things get bad. So at Zendesk, we have a very, very specific pipeline that you need to follow to deploy. This is how it works. First, we have a phase one in staging, when we run a very heavy test suite of integration tests, both browser and API, and then we give 50 minutes bake time. 50 minutes is time where we are not doing anything. We expect the people deploying code to test manually, but honestly, a lot of times, there is no manual test there. But sometimes things pop up. Like sometimes there is processes that run once an hour, and then that's why they catch the error. It's a useful practice. Moreover, this is staging. Then we deploy into Canary. Canary is a production pod, so it's a set of accounts, but where we have mainly test accounts and other things, but mainly test accounts. Here, we run a smaller test suite. That is the same that we'll run in all the pods, and we leave a longer baking time, just to make really, really sure that nothing like a cron is breaking the system. After that, we run through all the phases with the same standard test suite. This is actually important because sometimes you find bugs that only happens in one pod. This is because some pods are regional. I remember once we had a bug that was affecting only Ukrainian accounts because of certain things within coding. And we only found that in phase 5, I think it was, when we hit the European pods. In total, a deploy in Classic of the monolith takes around 3 hours. Still, I would say the most important thing for us from a reliability perspective is the concept of ownership. Why? Well, we have a lot of code. A lot of code means that historically, we have a lot of committers. A lot of people push code into Zendesk. Okay, you may be thinking, Zendesk has been around for a long time, like 17 years. Maybe most of these people, left the company, and there's way less people working in the monolith now. Well, not really. Only in the last 365 days, 570 different committers push code into the main branch. And this can be problematic. You want to have a good order for it to make sense, so it doesn't end up in a fight. It can end up in such a hellish fight as this AI image you can see there. You want to be able to trace who did what and who is responsible of what. So we use code owners, which is a feature I think in GitHub, where all files needs to be owned by one team. This is very useful not only about saying who is responsible of this incident. Our culture is not like this, but more of who is going to be working on a certain project or who can help us when there is a problem. Thanks to this, it becomes way, way easier to track. finally, and I'm getting to the end, maybe the most important about an application that has been using Rails for a lot of years, 17 in our case, is upgrading it. So I will explain you some battle histories. Then we started with Rails 1.0. And right now we are, I should have checked. I think we are in 7.1 or 7.2. I do not remember. Probably 7.1. We upgraded thanks to, honestly, testing. We have a lot of tests, and having a lot of tests and being able to run them against different versions make us feel pretty safe when we move to a new version. Actually, this is why we are running all the time, not all the time, but very often tests against 2 different Rails versions. We execute tests against the current one, the one that is in production, and against the next one that we want to move. So imagine we are in Rails 7.0. We are going to be running tests against 7.0 and 7.1. The idea here is to avoid regression. So we have a team working on the upgrade. You don't want that, hey, I fixed this 1,000 tests. Oh my God, someone modified the file and broke them again. Once a group of tests is green, it needs to stay green. We don't allow regression in that regard. Finally, which one have been the pain points of upgrading Rails through so many versions? Well, the next slide kind of hurts me because it's a technique that you used to adore and a book I love. But honestly, metaprogramming. If you've been around a long time in Ruby, you remember that 15, even 10 years ago, metaprogramming was amazing. Everybody was using it all the time. It was like monkey patching stuff was super normal. Ghost methods. Anybody remembers what were ghost methods? Well, the problem is that when you have a huge application and you need to maintain it and upgrade it, this becomes like a huge pain. For a long time, we kind of avoided that. Say, okay, you can monkey patch again this method so it works with Rails 4 or whatever, until we got to Rails 5. Basically, trying to upgrade from Rails 4 to 5 broke all the tests, and we weren't even sure why. So at that point, we decided to go hard mode, and decided, let's remove all this magic. Let's make this code as simple as possible. Actually, this was a bit led also by Ryan Davis. Let's try to make things as simple and straightforward as possible. Problem is that upgrade took us 2.5 years. It was very, very long. This is actually how it went during the last year. And the good news is that since then it has been way easier. We've been able to follow more or less the current version of Rails. Still, what I would say is our lesson and the things that we would do different is what I call first mover disadvantage. A lot of times at Zendesk, we wanted a new feature, for example, strong parameters, and we develop our own version of strong parameters. Until I think in Rails 5 appeared a version that we really wanted to use, so we had to remove all our own implementation and go to the new one. This is actually happening right now with sharding. We've been using sharding for 15 years with this gem. Actually, it's a public gem. And since Rails 6, now Rails, the main branch, has a native system of sharding. And we want to move to it, and that will be some work that we need to do. My advice on this is join the fun. If you want to develop a new feature for Rails, you want to create a library, ask around. Maybe someone is already working on this, and you can help. Maybe nobody's thought about that, and you can start, but be very public about it. Go and annoy people in the Rails repo, create an issue, talk, over communicate. Okay, I'm getting to the end. I would like to leave you with a few words. So this presentation is a continuation of one I did a couple of years ago about scaling. Well, mainly about scaling from a performance perspective. I was very obsessed for a long time with that topic. Actually, I joined Zendesk because I wanted to learn how to scale a Rails application. And actually, as the MC said, I actually writing a book about the topic. So it really obsessed me. But after talking with a lot of people in conferences, I realized that there is other problems when trying to scale. It's not only about performance. The good news with performance is that it's very obvious. When something is slow, it's obvious or doesn't work. But when an engineering organization doesn't work, it's not that obvious. When you have a way of working that maybe can survive another day, but eventually won't make it. The most fascinating part is that what constitutes a well-run organization is pretty debatable. There's different styles of leadership, different styles of organization. My take is that knowing your history can help. If you know the history of Ruby, of Rails, of your own org or your own company, you know a lot of stuff that can help you to guide to the future. I will give you 2 examples. You remember Gandalf, like this powerful guy that knows all the spells and is a guidance for the hobbits. Sometimes when you have a newcomer to the organization, you can feel a bit like this. That's the good part of knowing the past. However, there is also a negative side. Like in Saruman, no? Imagine like the past is this small guy telling you, do this, do that, no? You can be trapped in the past, like, oh, this worked 10 years ago, let's continue. Recently we had this case where I wanted to develop a feature a certain way, and I had a lot of resistance from a senior leader, senior technical leader at Zendesk. And eventually I told, hey, why you don't agree? I see obviously that you don't want, but I don't understand why. He told me, well, 2 years ago we tried the same and we failed. I asked the reasons, and it was something that we were able now to overcome. So, you need to know the history, but not be trapped by it. There is actually an anti-pattern called the frozen caveman anti-pattern that is about that. It's like, I did things in a certain way, and I will do them like this forever. So, and I'm finishing. What's the right attitude when thinking about history, about the past? My recommendation is take distance from it. Imagine it's a bard, like a storyteller that comes from the past, and he's going to explain you stories. It can be interesting. You should have the attitude of the woman in the picture, no? Okay, nice, cool. Maybe you can learn, maybe you can use it, but don't put your ego in it. Don't defend it. It's not personal. Hopefully, if we continue observing the past and we learn from it, hopefully we'll have Ruby for a lot of years in the future. Thank you.